Wow, I'm just blown away by this morning, right? So good. So many great speakers. And first up in this afternoon is this woman that I've had the pleasure of knowing for, I guess it's been like 7 years now. I've known you a long time, Elaine. So Elaine Tan Comeau is the mother of three, wife, teacher, the 2014 Canadian Mompreneur of the Year, and she is the CEO and founder of one of Dragon's Den favorite pitches. Easy Daysies, Elaine. Sorry, I said that all wrong. Basically, she went on to Dragon's Den and she got an investment from Jim Treliving, I believe, yes? And Kevin. Kevin! Yes. Okay. For Easy Daisies. Who knows what that is? It's this, I know, it's this phenomenal product that helps you organize your morning. Who doesn't want that? Organize your life, really, your day with your kids. Elaine loves to support women in business and is the ambassador for women for Mompreneurs Canada and just launched Vancouver Mompreneurs. So let's give it.
I came to Canada when I was 3, turning 4 years old, from a very hot tropical country called Malaysia. I quickly learned then that family is so important. Like, that little unit of family is so important. So coming to Canada with zero English and learning quickly how to survive in a whole different climate, because we landed in March of winter in Toronto, coming from a very tropical country with no English was a fun challenge. But it was the sacrifice that my parents made from having, my dad had his own business, to starting off with a job at Harvey's cleaning toilets. And you know what? My dad never complained. My mom never complained. It is a blessing to have great parents.
I'm so honored to be here and so humbled. And I have to applaud this lovely lady who brings all of these amazing women together. Thank you, Christine. Is this on? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I am very honored and humbled to be here, and I can't wait to hear all of your stories. And oh, thank you kindly. Thank you. I was thinking of Mi Young when she was saying, we asked our children how their day was and what their favorite parts were. And I remember asking my son, who was in kindergarten, and I said, what was the best part of school today? And he's like, I tooted. That's awesome. I'm like, what else happened? And he's like, I burped. I'm like, you had a full day. Good job. Yes, I also asked him when he was 5 what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he said, a T-Rex. I'm like, yeah. But I wanted to share with you a famous saying that's out there, and it goes like this: sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Are you familiar with that one? Yeah. I'm also tech challenged. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yes, please. Thank you. Well, from my experience and assessment as an educator, as a mom, as a daughter, as a human being, I want to tweak that familiar saying to become the reality that I have witnessed, which is sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will impact my life forever. And just like marks on a wooden door, harsh comments and words are like piercing nails into that door, or abrasive like sandpaper, leaving painful scratches. And no matter how many affirmations and how many compliments we paint over those scars, they are still there. And I think the hardest part is knowing that there are some children who are not strong enough to prove those statements wrong. And I had the privilege of starting my teaching career in an inner city school. And my grade 2 class, I had not one single married family. 7 moms were prostitutes. Parents came drunk to pick up their children. And outside our schoolyard was a gang who was successfully recruiting our grade 5s before they would even graduate from elementary school. My 7-year-olds in my grade 2 class, they were often latchkey kids who would pick up their brother or sister from kindergarten, and they'd go home and make dinner for themselves. And I would see burn marks on their forearms from reaching over the stove. I had the most cuts and bruises teaching at that school because of fights I would have to break up, from like stepping into like clawing fists, sometimes armed with broken glass, and they're 7 years old. And I would come up behind my student, and I would hug them tight and just hold them so that to break up a fight. And they would resist at first, calling out all sorts of names, and then they would melt. They would melt into my hug, and then they would start calling themselves those same names they were lashing out. And my heart would deflate with them, because I knew that those taunts were just echoes of what they constantly heard at home. The words that we say leave an indelible impact, a mark on our door. I had the blessing of teaching at this other school where I would often walk by my colleague's classroom and returning from bringing my children to music. And I would hear my colleague quietly teaching at the chalkboard. And over her voice, I would hear that of a 7-year-old boy, whom I would call Matthew. And Matthew would be at the back of the room, and he would be yelling, "Shut up, I hate you!" And he'd be like, "You're a loser!" And he would run around the classroom hitting the back of kids' heads. And I would go in and I would sit with him, or I would take him out for a walk with me. But if we go back 2 years before that, at Matthew's kindergarten parent-teacher meeting, you will hear his mother say to his teacher while pointing right at him, "I never wanted him. He was a mistake." She would continue that. She would not be back because her 2 older daughters will be raising him. And if we go back a year and a half before that, you will see in Matthew's file that his mother left his father and Matthew when he was 3. Matthew's father was older but loved Matthew very much. And Matthew's father one day had a heart attack in their home with Matthew. And it was not until 4 days later that they discovered Matthew's father's dead body, with Matthew curled up beside him, and around were boxes torn open with uncooked rice and noodles, and they could only imagine that little Matthew was starving and trying to feed himself. But the words that we say leave a mark on our children's door. I fell in love with my class every year, and so much so my grade 2 class sang at my wedding. And now they're really big and finding me on Twitter. And I try to convey 2 messages every day to my kids. And the first one is to reach for those stars, because no matter how many times you fall, you'll still land higher than when you started. And the second one is to be kind always. And I love what Jesse Jackson said when he said, "Never look down on anyone unless you are helping them up." I was very blessed. I'm going to do an out loud nod to I was very blessed to be raised by parents. There's my mom and my grandmother, who taught my sister and I to work hard and to be grateful for everything. My mom would teach us from the Bible to use words to build up and to edify others. But when I think of a woman who left the first permanent mark on my door, I think of my grandmother. She was the smartest woman I've ever met. When I was about 8 years old, she shared with me that when she was 7, she quit school, and she had to roll up cigarettes to sell on the street to help support her family. And she said to me, and left a mark on my door, when she said, "Girls can make money. Do not be afraid to take chances and make your own opportunities." So I went out, I picked up some rocks and washed them and sold them at recess for a nickel. I made it. When I was about, sorry, I'm just gonna get water. When I was about 11, she shared with me how she refused to wrap her feet so they would remain tiny and somehow be attractive to a wealthier man who would choose to marry her because of the size of her little feet. and she would have none of that. And so she told me she chose my grandfather, because he was smart enough to look at her pretty face and her intelligence and not at her huge honking feet. And she left a mark on my door when she said, "Be proud of who you are and do not conform to the opinions of others." And similar to Myung's stories, my sister and I were often the only Asian kids in our classes, and that's a whole different story. But when my grandmother shared with me when I was about 14 years old, and she shared about how she heard the sound of sirens sounding, warning of Japanese invasion during the World War II times. And she had to hide in a foot of water, squatting in the rice fields, 9 months pregnant and in labor with my Uncle Gary. And she mortified me when she shared how the women who were helping to deliver her firstborn baby took her blood and smeared it all over themselves to disgust the enemy soldiers who would soon find them. And she left a mark on my door when she said, "In difficult situations, you're going to have to do things outside of your comfort zone, but have faith that it works out for good in the end." And perhaps that was the courage that I needed when I chose to leave a secure teaching job and launch a product line 2 days after my third baby was born. Because, that's the best time to do it. And I think of my grandmother, who lost a battle to cancer in 2001, and I think, how blessed am I that she left these beautiful, positive marks on my door. And my desire to communicate to children, to reach high, and to believe that you could do it led me to eventually create Easy Daysies, and which is a visual schedule to help children just feel less anxious and feel more confident with their day. And I feel so blessed when a mom who's pregnant with her fourth will write to me that her husband forced her to write to me because they no longer have to nag all morning and they're sleeping in 20 minutes more each morning. Or a mom with 3 children under the age of 7 and they all have autism. And she shares that because of Easy Days, she doesn't have to talk all day long and cry all night long. Or a foster mom. I'm not gonna cry. Thank you for that hug. Or a foster mom sharing how in a house where there was no calmness, there's calmness now, because children can predict in their lives when they're so unpredictable. Thank you. Yes, usually after my name follows Kleenex. Thank you, Julie. But I feel very blessed. I feel blessed to be in this room, because we are children's examples when we lift others up and build each other up. When we cry in front of our kids and they see how we pick ourselves up, that is a lesson that they can't learn in school. I now have the honor of being invited into schools to talk about being great kids, which is an acronym I use to help teach children how to use words to build themselves up and to build others up so they can learn resiliency and altruism, so they could become that active contributor and problem solver in our world. Moms, there's going to be lots of times where we have nothing nice to say to our children. Nothing. And I challenge all of us to picture our children's doors. And I want to challenge and encourage us to be the one who leaves that positive, beautiful mark on our children's doors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll take this.